Now, we can see that there are a lot of miniaturized hairs along his hairline, but also, I want to point this out, he seems to have some redness along the hairline
Maybe
too,
not even
so
1
he
year.
could For some people, this is their 2-year result if you have such a baseline like this, right? But he got this probably half the time. And who knows, if he was on finasteride, maybe this could be his 1-year result. But because he's on dutasteride, this is his 1-year result. Hey guys, before we continue this video, I would like to mention that we now have liposomal minoxidil sulfate on my website, folligens.com, folligenz.com, and if the order queue is available and open, you can order it there. We're running it as a cosmetic. There are other sort of botanicals inside of this particular topical that are pretty helpful when it comes to conditioning the hair. So that's at folligens.com, folligenz.com. That's folligenz.com. Go check it out and maybe even try it out. See you there. Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another hair progress review video. We're back on Tressless, the largest hair loss form in the world, on the wonderful, I guess you can say wonderful, I don't know, website Reddit. So we're looking at this particular user by the name of XXJoeDoesXX. Maybe he's an XXXTentacion fan, I don't know. But let's have a look at his post. The title of his post is, quote, 22M or 22 male, dutasteride plus min or minoxidil plus ket. Hopefully he means ketoconazole. 1 year, unquote. So let's have a look at his baseline. So I'm assuming this is when he was 21 years old. And we can see that he has a lot of recession at such a young age, meaning that he is DHT sensitive. And before we even look at the pictures in the camera roll, I just want to say this, right? If you're young and you have severe hair loss like this, if you're not concerned about side effects, don't waste time with finasteride. Jump right into dutasteride, because dutasteride at 0.5 milligram per day lower scalp DHT by around 50%. Whereas finasteride lower scalp DHT, I think between 30 to 40%. Now, in some people, that 30 to 40% is just enough to actually help them get gains, or rather just enough to maintain their hair. Now, if you don't want to find out what camp you belong to, and you're fighting against time here, right? Jump right into dutasteride. That's my opinion, especially if you're a young dude with such a severe amount of hair loss. If I had to make an estimation on his hairline, I would say he's probably a Norwood 4. Now, we can see that there are a lot of miniaturized hairs along his hairline, but also, I want to point this out, he seems to have some redness along the hairline too, so he could be dealing with some kind of seborrheic dermatitis. Now, this isn't the best of, qualities when it comes to pictures, but we can see the redness is pretty pronounced along his hairline. There are some, gaps in the midsection when he's pulling back his hair, so he's probably having some density issues in the midsection as well. But this is a tough spot to start at, but you still have to try treatment and see that, hey, maybe you might respond, maybe you might maintain, but so long as you try treatment, that is what matters. So let's go on to the second picture in the camera roll. And already you can see that he's made a tremendous recovery. Now, I don't know what timeline this is, but if we look closely, right, we can clearly see that he has some kind of redness. Still, he has this redness along his hairline, some white areas. This could be the malassezia from a potential seborrheic dermatitis outbreak. In fact, I'm more inclined to believe that because of the dandruff he has in his scalp. And also this weird area over here, it looks like kind of like a seborrheic dermatitis plaque. I could be wrong, but that's just how I see it. And obviously the redness is giving more of an indication that that might be the case. But still, from his baseline over here to his second picture in the camera roll, he's made a tremendous amount of recovery. And keep in mind, he's pulling back his hair so we can see his hairline properly. So this is a pretty consistent sort of view, in my opinion. So let's go on to the second picture in the camera roll. And already you can see that he's making gains in the hairline area. These are some substantial gains, right? He doesn't have to Norwood fraud that much. I guess he went from what would be considered a Norwood 4 to what I can say with, I don't know, what do you guys think this Norwood here is, right? I would say maybe he's like a Norwood 3, but he can Norwood fraud into a Norwood 2, right? But still, he has some room for recovery because his hairline is growing back. The hairs that were more vellus in the beginning at his baseline, more miniaturized, especially in the second picture over here, these sort of now intermediate hairs, right? A couple of vellus hairs still have transitioned in the third picture to being more intermediate. And if they go terminal, that means he's essentially reversing his Norwood loss and he's going back to a less severe Norwood state. So I would say maybe this is like a Norwood 3, Norwood fraud into Norwood 2, if he does some stylistic, coverage techniques. So yeah, let's go to the fourth picture in the camera roll. And already the fourth picture here is pretty substantial in terms of recovery. So we can see that a substantial amount of those hairs that were once sort of these vellus intermediate-esque hairs have kind of went terminal. And still, he has a lot of, I guess you can say intermediate hairs along the hairline. If I had to put a estimation on his Norwood over here, I would say maybe on his, so this is my left side, so his right side, if the picture is reversed, his right side, my left side, would be maybe a Norwood 2? Maybe? It's kind of tough to tell if you don't have a side profile view, but I would say maybe 2. And his right side, or rather, my right side, his left side, is a Norwood 2.5. Just my opinion. But still, he has made a tremendous recovery from baseline, being like a Norwood 4, kind of aesthetic, to a Norwood 2.5 normalized, right? And again, he can Norwood fraud his way with some stylistic coverage to looking like a Norwood 1, looking normal to the point where maybe people can't even tell that he has androgenetic alopecia. The average person would not be able to tell that this guy had any hair loss issues before. And that goes to show how effective treatment is if you start early, right? Now, he's 22. He had this sort of baseline appearance at 21. But if you start early, even if you're at such a horrible state with your hair loss, you don't know what kind of recovery you might get. Now, again, I've said if you're not concerned about side effects, just hop to Dutasteride. You don't want to find out 5 years down the line that finasteride was only maintaining for you, or at the very best, in that sort of worst case scenario, slowing down your hair loss. You want to get to something that you might be sure is going to lower that scalp DHT. And again, finasteride, from what I remember, lower scalp DHT between 30 to 40% at 1 milligram or 5 milligram per day. And dutasteride at 0.5 milligram per day lowers scalp DHT by 50%. Now, if you go up to 2.5 milligrams per day, a large dose, be careful. You probably could get side effects, but 2.5 milligrams per day of dutasteride has been known to lower scalp DHT by around 80%. So I'm not saying you have to jump to 2.5, but at the very least, 0.5 milligram per day, or maybe even 3 times a week, can help you out. Because we know that with dutasteride, you're suppressing the type 1 5-alpha reductase enzyme, but also more of the type 2 is being suppressed than finasteride can suppress. So it's a big boost when it comes to hair loss recovery. So that is some pretty good recovery. Even in the second picture, right? If we just go to the second picture over here, comparing it to the baseline, a lot of people would love to get this sort of result, right? For some people, this is their 1 year result from maybe not even 1 year. For some people, this is their 2 year result if you have such a baseline like this, right? But he got this probably at half the time. And who knows, if he was on finasteride, maybe this could be his 1 year result. But because he's on dutasteride, this is his 1 year result. Now, granted, he's also on minoxidil, and granted, he probably had some kind of seborrheic dermatitis outbreak that he was solving with his ketoconazole use. But I don't see that redness along his hairline at his full 1 year result, as we did with the second picture, and even the baseline. Also, I don't see as much dandruff. I don't see any, to be honest. I can't see any dandruff in his scalp. But if you look at his second picture, his third picture, he had a little bit of dandruff here and there, a little bit here and there, right? His second picture over here, he had a little bit of dandruff. He still has, or rather, he still had that redness along his hairline, where I think he was having a seborrheic dermatitis outbreak. You can see that there are some scales here and there of the sebderm, of the malassezia. So, obviously, from baseline to his full recovery at 1 year, he has improved his Norwood hair loss. And he doesn't have to Norwood fraud into some kind of weird comb over that makes it look like he's not losing hair, but we all know he's losing hair. But he's not losing hair because the recovery worked very well for him. So let's have a look at the comments section to see people's takes. Now, from Computer Sufficient 48, this user says, quote, "Didn't know ketamine would be that effective at reversing hair loss," unquote. And I think it's because he put ket 1 year. We all know he's saying ketoconazole. No need to get into that too much. And we have some little memes over here. You know, this dapper horse, when you say ketamine hydrochloride instead of ket. Yeah, cool horse. And yeah, a lot of people giving their congrats. And yeah, these are insane results. Now, would you say he's a hyper responder? That's my question to you guys. Do you think this guy is a hyper responder of sorts? I don't know. I think it's just the case that he started with an aggressive treatment being dutasteride at a young age because he was very DHT sensitive. Again, if you have this sort of hairline at 22, or rather 21, you've been dealing with hair loss for a bit in your teens to get here. So, great recovery, substantial regrowth, and good on him. Now, with that being said, I've started a company. Yes, I have to plug this. Obviously, I started a company. Why wouldn't I plug this? This is Folligens, FOLLIGENZ.com, and I started this company because we want to put liposomal minoxidil sulfate out into the market. We're sending this globally. And we have this at a 10% concentration and a 5% concentration. We are running it as a cosmetic. And at the time of recording this video, 203 out of 300 is still in stock for the 10% concentration. And for the 5% concentration, 276 out of 300 is still in stock. And if it's not in stock by the time this video goes up, we will have some sort of order queue form where you can enter in your email address to be notified when any of these items are back in stock. So hopefully you guys can go check it out and maybe even try it out. But that's it for this video. And to this guy, Joe, you've made a substantial recovery from baseline all the way up to a year out. Congratulations to you, and I wish you more gains. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.